everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, welcome you guys.
Right.
Yeah, I was just saying, I feel like we're a newspaper because, they say like hot off the press. I feel like we have a topic that is truly hot off the press. Just so you know, last night we were going to just do a full-on question and answer kind of situational workshop and
Which
had
people have found very
we
helpful.
can do some of that. This I found very helpful, but is there a topic that's on our mind that came together last night? And then I felt it in practice this morning. So there's like some really interesting examples, but it's making it very
and so the title of this week's leadership in practice class is awareness without shame. So awareness without shame. And the goal here is to give you a tool that I think could be effective in helping you through that process. But I have two thoughts really quick before we go into it. One was I just went and peed real quick, and why that's relevant.
Just say go to the bathroom.
No, but why it's relevant is so I'm a little bit older now. I'm almost 53, not quite yet, but this year. So 52 and a half. But when I was in high school, I was on the wrestling team, and before you go in the wrestling match, everything was about trying to feel as light as possible. So you do your number twos, you do your number ones or whatnot. But I was thinking like in a similar way for teaching lip.
Yeah.
I feel the need to feel as light as possible, and then thinking that I'll be more agile and mental in my
mentally
right. So I, even though I really had no reason to really pee, but I just went anyways. But so just kind of mentally set.
When I go to bed at night, Shirley, it's like even if there's one drop I can squeeze out, it's going. That's what happens when you're almost 50 or 50.
Yes.
I'm not there quite yet, but close.
She rounds up. Megan's 50.
48, but I'll be 49 in a few weeks.
That's true.
March 1st,
which is literally almost 50. So she's rounded up for a while. She's rounded. The other part, just really quick, we were just talking right before we came up, this whole topic, and I think of three synonyms: the word leadership, the word decision-making, and even human judgment. I think a very simple way to even think of all three words, and this is all around, we have a class on leadership and discussions, is all around making better choices. And I know we tell this to children, but when I think about when you improve your skills in leadership, you improve your skills in decision-making, you improve your skills in human judgment, it's building the skills that you can make better choices. And I think that phrase is so broad that we think about these blunt and big choices. But what ends up happening is this notion of how do you make slightly better choices all the time, everywhere in real time? And I think about even slightly better choices, slightly better plays. Yeah. And the sum total of your ability to do that is what we call compounding. You see the compounding effects of making better choices. And one of the key elements that matters a lot is speed. Can you make better choices with speed? Or do we kind of, the class we taught around the cost of indecisions? How many things do we snowplow and say, you know what, I'm just going to debate that a little more later, or think about it a little more. And so we don't make choices. And actually the realization maybe last week is we make choices to keep all these choices alive, right? I'm snowplowing it, and all these things that I haven't made decisions on, I haven't figured out. I'm still trying to gather pros and cons of what to do. Mm-hmm. And in the process, the amount of mental energy spent basically moving nothing forward. And that happens to a lot of us. So this whole notion of when I think about leadership and decision-making and human judgment, it's around how do you build the skills that I can make better choices, slightly better plays in real time. So over time, and over time shows up fast, the sum total compounding can dramatically change. It feels so slight in the moment, but dramatically sum up to a different place. And that's the skill we're talking about. We have a live class here, and I think one of the sort of like my Garden of Eden dream is that we as a community meet obviously over Zoom, but also in person, but meet on the topic of leadership and on this topic. And then I think we're going straight into lunch discussions. And this class itself actually came off a story how I lost my virginity when I was in high school, which
I told him
might go into.
I didn't share it. In this
yeah, I know Terry's like earmuffs, but so Terry, if the class goes well, it's bold. I may share, and then it'll be recorded forever. If not, we'll just share it at lunch at a discussion. So, but it's all tied to the same thing. It's pretty relevant.
I'm going to help make that judgment. I'll give like a little bit of that.
And just so you know,
now it's enough.
And since we have someone here who is French, it involves a French woman. So and like Just, so I dropped some little hints. Okay. All right. Having said that, we are, there's nothing romantic about yes. But there's a leadership lesson in the story, which is why I think it relates. Yes.
Should know that. Yeah.
Or that there is a leadership lesson in there.
That is a leadership lesson.
Okay. So going back to
Kathy helped us come up with this title. So we were talking last night at dinner. This topic it's so interesting because last week I think I mentioned I wanted to talk about how shame and blame are connected, but it wasn't sure if it would fit into this class or not. But as we were talking last night about all the things, Charlie and I will take the whole week and look at what are the things that we went through, what were some of the lessons that we were learning and some of the challenges we have in life and work. And it's fascinating because this actually came out as one of the thoughts. And as we were talking about it last night, Kathy said, "Are you saying like awareness without shame?" And I was like, yes, that's a great title, right? That's a great title. Like, how do you get to awareness without feeling shame? So that's the topic. And I think Charlie has a framework we're going to share. And then
so we're going to show you a framework, which I believe could end up being a powerful tool. And then we're going to break it down and kind of build it back up. So you don't need to feel stressed on it's not that much on the page, but this is the page we're going to take you through. This notion of awareness without shame, that it includes kind of 3 different phases. We'll talk about that in more detail. We'll talk about the common challenges that show up and kind of 2 different roles you can look at this with. So you don't need to kind of memorize all this. We're going to break this down and go into detail. But before we go there was a little piece, I think, that Megan wanted.
This is fun. I found out on PowerPoint. I mean, I've been using PowerPoint for whatever it is, 30 years now, but there's like a new feature where you can take letters and they look really cool. Anyways, I was just messing around. The essay. So if you guys have ever heard the phrase essay, like what's your essay? Usually stands for situational awareness or situational assessment. I know they move, you guys. They move. Look at that. I know. I didn't have time. It was too late because I wanted to play with it a little bit, but
yeah. So talk about why.
I feel like an old lady using PowerPoint. I haven't figured out all the new things, but I'm like, how cool is that? Yeah.
It's just wow.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So you can see in the process of making a class, sometimes we go on tangents.
Yeah, no, it's like, when you let your brain just go a little bit lazy. I had one of those.
And this was not about leadership. It was just about,
this very cool new feature in PowerPoint. And it was buried in about 50 other features I've never seen before. I just clicked on some button. I was like, what is this?
And you can do it with like emoji faces too.
Emoji face? There's a ton of new
and you can go like 360 moving around. So I was like, wow, that's useless, but kind of good to suck up time.
Thank you. This is curiosity. It's best. Okay. Yeah, it does, right? A little bit more, right? You can remember it. But anyways, I think that I wanted to, I know it's very simple essay, but there is a difference between being situationally aware, in the military, they call it a situational assessment, right? Like you're scanning for the situation. It's very different than self-awareness. You as the self are in the situation. So the reality is you not only have to be aware of what's happening, you have to be aware of yourself in the situation. And I think the hardest part actually is, if you go to the next slide, this is a lot less sexy, but like situational awareness, what's happening, it's assessment of the situation versus what's happening with me, assessment of myself. What is going on with me right now? Now, this can go wrong if you do like Viktor Frankl last week, we talked about if you spend too much time, what's happening with me, where are my emotions, what's going on, you can actually make yourself sick, right? You could make yourself worse. But this is why this is truly a skill that I think we'll all be working on for the rest of our lives, is to actually get self-awareness. And it's a moving target, and then you need to be doing it every day, right? Yes. Things are changing every day with you, how you wake up, you fed the night before into your brain. So how do you get to
I never see you wear the brown anymore.
I do.
Yes. Okay. You can hear us now. Sorry. A little audio thing, but
yeah.
But can I tell you what's interesting is this? So essay is a term that is commonly used at least in the US military. We have Hector here, who was in the Air Force as well. Yeah. And whether sometimes, I don't know if it's situational awareness or situational assessment, but I think they generally mean the same thing, which is kind of, are you reading the situation correctly?
Right.
Right. And are you reading before you decide what to do?
Right.
And I think the part that is hardest in reading the situation is usually, as Megan said, we are always in the situation, the ones that we're reading. Now, I know we also love to kind of backseat drive everyone else's situations, especially on countries and presidents and whatnot. And, it's easy to. I mean, it's and of course, the most annoying ones are when children think that, you know what, if I was you, I'd do a better job. I'm like, yeah, wait till you become me. And we'll talk about that later. But but that notion of it's easy to kind of feel like someone else's situation is easy.
Yeah.
But when it comes to our situations we are in, where we are the participant in our lives, the place we have the greatest control, the most autonomy is actually ourselves in it. And so the ability to change the outcome, do better plays, make better choices, all starts with how aware are you of yourself in any given situation? And it changes rapidly, right? And that's the part. And then there's changing, and then there's trending. So it's a way more complicated topic than most people think. And then from there, you have to get an awareness of the whole situation, not just yourself, before you go and figure out what to do. And all of that, remember, is often happening in our brains in milliseconds, right? And that's what's called judgment. We're just figuring all that out. And because we don't slow it down, we don't quite have it accurately, we make bad choices or we make no choices. And so that's kind of where things go wrong. So pulling just really quick, this was a couple leadership in practice ago, and I brought this up only for one main reason, this notion of meaning making. And I kind of forgot the title I'd like, that meaning making is the foundation of high agency. High agency has become one of the hot sort of like buzzword topics that in the new world of AI, one of the most important things is to develop high agency, where it's all of technologies making human beings have lower and lower agency, where you feel like, wait, everything is not about me. The AI even tells you, like, it's almost like saying, what should I prompt you? And it's like, well, this is the top prompts people are asking. And anything you even put in, it tells you, you want me to tell you more about this? It takes over agency. So how do I, in a world where everything is trying to take away agency, build reps and see the importance of building high agency, which is saying, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to be helpless. First and foremost, how do I develop my opinion, my thoughts, my awareness, and then figure out how I drive before getting feedback, before getting reaction and help from others. And the whole class was all around this Viktor Frankl guy who came from, the whole, like terrible stuff that happened in Nazi and Germany and all that stuff. But all around that, it's not about a situation that's tough, but it's how we make meaning to it that changes how you experience it. And so that notion of meaning making, I'm sharing this because this topic is going to be important, tied to the tool we're about to introduce. So many different ways to think of this topic of where, actually, can I add one thing that maybe to the thing Megan said?
Yeah.
This was Megan's words and I loved it, where she said, the shittier you make yourself feel, you're gonna get to a place that you're gonna likely blame someone else. And when I think of blaming someone else, think about the notion of generating conflict.
Yeah.
Right? How many of us have repped and built a muscle that is so automatic on a daily basis of making yourself feel shitty? And to recognize that the chain reaction you can trigger when you do that and do that too easily, maybe too automatically, is that it gets to a place where eventually you start to look of who to blame for how shitty I feel. And that notion of meaning making is what's happening. You make yourself feel shitty, and then you're like, why am I feeling so shitty? Who is making me feel shittier or shitty? And in the process, whether it's direct, passive aggressive, or just completely like silent, you are generating conflict. And we were having this discussion that how many of us have so much excess energy, so much excess mental capacity in a day that I just want to go and add a few extra, workouts and generate conflict so I can just keep working out some real difficulty out there that wouldn't have existed unless I generated the conflict.
Yes.
And so that chain reaction of you make yourself feel shitty, you want to think, you're generating conflict. And if you start to associate that chain reaction, you might not necessarily stop, but you might start to get more aware as you start to make yourself feel shitty. Add one more thing on that. Whoa. Am I about to start a chain reaction? So what were you
I was just going to say the notion of like reflecting on any situation where you are in conflict. I think I'm saying this, recognizing it may not be true for everybody, but you'll probably be able to peel it back and say, wait a second, did I start that? You know, that feeling, wait, did I actually start that? Because Charlie's my training partner. We work together. Even it happened this morning. I was, whatever, had a whole situation. When we unpacked, I'm like, oh my God, I created that narrative. I created that conflict, but it's very easy to be like, wait, no, you said that. And then it made me think this. No, I came in with a whole different set of things in my mind. But I didn't realize I was creating conflict, right? Like, but if we didn't stop to unpack that for a second, that will keep repeating. And then at some point you say, you know what, maybe this topic is a thing, or maybe you start building these mental models of don't bring this up, don't talk about this, don't be late, don't be whatever, or it can't be late, you just create so much conflict. But anyways, I realized that even this morning, I'm like, oh my God, I totally did that, right? Like it's so little, and it takes like a nanosecond to create that kind of conflict when you trace it back. And so if we just stopped doing that, or just prevented even one more day of that, or one less situation like that, like we'd have more peace, we'd have less cortisol.
And I feel just in general, leadership in theory is about stop that, do that. In practice, it doesn't work that way. So don't evaluate yourself in such a binary on off. Recognize we're organic, very similar to like winter is freezing, or maybe shedding cells or skin everywhere. Like I want you to think organic. Our mind and everything should be thinking like that. There's new skin generating, there's skin flaking off. That's just kind of being human. So don't think about the binary, but think about, as you get aware, you start to change ever so subtly. Wait, when I'm making myself feel shitty, right? That is me almost fueling and feeding the beginnings of generating conflict with other people. And if you start to associate that, you might just do a little bit less or be more aware of when you're doing it, and don't add the tiny extras, right? That might generate more. Okay, so going back to this class. So there's 3 different phases, and you can use different language if you want, but I'm going to start first this notion of the beginner phase. The beginner phase, the term we used to use way back that one of our advisors gave us was the first 2 inches. So if you're in England, you might say the first 2 centimeters, but like the beginning. In the beginning phase, what's complex to understand is doesn't mean like you can be 50 years old and still experience a beginning phase on anything. You can actually have done something for 10 years, but be stuck in beginning phase. And so to understand the nuances of the beginner phase and why this is important is each phase has a unique challenge of its own. And when you recognize that, you actually, and I put at the bottom, the observer versus participant. So think of the participant as when I am in there. And obviously when you get real self-awareness skills, you can jump between being the participant and you can actually observe yourself and give yourself good advice. No matter how much you do that, there's always holes in it, which is why other people will help you catch your blind spots. But I put observer first because I think most of us, it's easier to be an observer in any situation, meaning it's much easier to judge and advise and give feedback to other people's situations, other people's lives, much harder. Not only give advice to myself, but to even recognize what you're doing. And so think of observer, simply plain English, just the idea of giving advice, giving reaction to anyone's situation. Participant is all about myself. And so in the beginner phase, every phase is a different challenge. The top challenge that shows up is that nobody is logical. It's illogical. When you try to explain something that happened, if you don't recognize that you were in the beginner phase, as you even explain it, you might feel the irrational nature of it or the broken logic. And as a result of it, you might feel kind of shameful. Right? You might feel embarrassed. You might feel like, I don't want to explain more. Or someone else might kind of observe and give you advice. And as they're repeating it to you, when you can hear that judgmental tone of, so you thought if you did that, they would then be favorable to you. And that's not advice that's repeating. It's like the tone tells you they're just trying to make you feel like shit. Right? Like what kind of... Right, but it's basically, and this notion of when you realize the beginner phase, and this is the part, I'll tell you the story later, but about even losing virginity, like whatever you do in the beginning, it's not logical, right? It's not logical. It's highly emotional what you do. I was using many other examples, like whether it's the first time we did the cold plunge or whether it's like the first time I did spin classes, like, like the belief that I might die or I might, like, it's like one of those things where you're like thinking about it and we're like, okay, that's not logical. And it's about giving yourself permission that, wait, the beginner phase is not logical. The beginner phase also is wrought with something interesting, which is the notion of too much information. We are picking up signals, and in the beginner phase of anything, we don't know how to weight the signals, weight the information. Everything becomes potentially a signal for danger, or it could be everything is a signal for like, oh my God, it could be so fun. Meaning we don't weight signals, data points well, because there's too much sensory overloaded information. Our own expectations and awareness of everything is off. And this notion of it's incredibly powerful simply to recognize by realizing this situation, I'm in the beginner phase or someone's in the beginner phase, you would give advice differently. You would actually reflect on and judge yourself differently. Yeah. It's almost like give permission to be illogical. And then you were like, oh, I was in the beginner phase.
Yeah. So I was just trying to think of that situation. I was just thinking, because I don't ski, but I skied once. Well, I actually skied once. My boyfriend in high school, he was really good. I did like that one green slope and I was like, this is not really my thing. It's fine. Then years later, when I was in not my thing. I like warm places. I'm from Cape Cod. I want the beach. You know what I mean? I want to be in the, anyways, doesn't matter. So I went later, somewhere in like my late 20s, but they took me by accident from my first slope to a blue. Blue is like beyond the green, then blue, then so my first real slope was a blue. And like when I looked over it looked to me like that. First off, I fell coming off the thing. You know what I mean? The chairlift. But then when I looked at the slope, I was like, it looked like that to me. So I took my skis off and I climbed down a little bit so I could get to a place where I felt like I could do it. But that was a beginner phase. I was just trying to think of the illogical, because I took a lot of trauma from that. Like by the time I got down that mountain, 45 minutes later, fell like maybe 2 or 3 times. I don't think I will ever do this again. I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't fun. Yes, my friends were like, I can't believe you only fell a few times. That's amazing. You should go back. Let's go again. And I had a General Hospital is on. I'm going back to the cabin. See you later. This is like in my 20s. Like I don't ever want to do this again.
And so in this
example, I was flinching with the thing, like I could die, you know?
But I can tell you're reliving the trauma as if you're, and so like
I have a list of those.
This idea of as an observer giving advice, I'd say, Megan, that was your beginner phase.
Right.
Your data points aren't accurate.
Right.
They're bracing, they're over signaled. And you said, not my thing. I was like, how do you know it's not
no, and like I wanted it to be too, you know, so it's cool. It's like, but I felt like it's why I wanted to do it. But even
you might have had an expectation that you would look so this way or ski bunny and who knows what. Maybe. But I'm saying, and it didn't match that. Instead, you look like someone who can't walk. You're falling all down.
I'm like a
toddler. And then you're
a toddler at the beginning.
And then it's cold. You might have boogies going down.
I took them off and tantrum down halfway down the mountain.
But what I'm saying is this, like, if you say that's the beginner phase, you don't take your lesson out of that. Not my thing. Right. Because how many things do we do like that where we've made too many decisions, too many mental models and things versus how many times do we say try 3 times? Right. And the reason we say try 3 times is usually when you try the first time, you have the beginner phase.
That's true.
There's so much illogical emotions and thoughts going through. You don't have a good read.
I just brought that up too, because I do feel like I have some regret, like wishing I kind of like stuck with it maybe. And because now it's like, whatever. There's some of it. I still could, but I fear of getting hurt.
I'm saying,
but whatever.
But emotion and whatnot.
Emotionally,
we were going to do a whole class on tone, which tells you the truth. And it's saying, for something you tried once, you're putting way too much emotion and weighting in it. And to recognize, wait, oh my God, that's like, because it's the beginner phase.
It's the beginner. That's
and even
I can't think of something that's truly
explain it, gripping your fists, and I remember. It's like, the beginner phase. Right. That's what beginners do. Right. Beginners
remember certain emotions and memories, and then
first time we ran the cold plunge, all of us were gripping the sides, looking for when our body would just suddenly freeze. Right. So that before we froze and died, we'd have to jump out. But meaning, that's the beginner phase. Right. So
it's a good example. The cold plunge.
Beginner phase. The next phase you can call it the intermediate phase, the middle phase. I just put it in between. And I put it because like, I always think about,
not a girl, not a
yes.
woman. She says, I'm not a girl and not yet a woman.
Somewhere in between,
which
is Britney Spears in her heyday.
Yeah.
So if you're a fan of Britney Spears there, like that phrase stuck with me always, that, this is the phase where, once again, you're not quite mature, but you're not the beginner, right? You're not a woman, you're not a girl, but you're in between, somewhere in between. And what's interesting about the in-between phase is a different challenge shows up. The challenge that shows up, and I put gaps show up, processes, systems are missing. Like when things start to mature and things are happening more than once, you start to build rules. So like, it's almost like if you cook ever in a kitchen, the first thing you do is, if you've never done, you just put stuff anywhere.
Yeah.
But as you use it more, you start to realize the things you go to and grab more often.
Right.
So you start to build a process or system. And this whole notion of understanding that often in this in-between phase, we start to get frustrated at because we're seeing something repeat, we might be frustrated that, God, someone should have made a rule or a system should have been in place. And imagine seeing it differently, saying, oh, I'm in the phase where a system needs to be in place. The reason why this repetitive thing is showing up is this is the moment where a system needs to be built. And so even the recognition of that says, wait, I am now graduated from the beginner phase. I am in the Britney Spears in-between phase. Yeah. And right here is where, like, I have to write the rule and start to iterate the system and the process and the rule. It might show up in, like how you like even get ready for school or how you get ready for work. The first day you're like, might just make up everything on the fly. At some point you start to see the common patterns. I mean, right now in New York, it's covered with snow. So we probably have a slightly different system of like making sure between gloves, hats, boots, like there's a different system you start building when things start repeating. And when you recognize that you're frustrated because a system is missing, it's to instead recognize, oh, this is the exact juncture that I'm supposed to build a system. And when you don't recognize it, once again, this is the awareness. Instead, we start to get angry, right? Yeah. You start to get angry that this is happening, and you start to like,
we shouldn't have this problem. Like, that's the frustration.
And I can't believe I made that same mistake again. Now that's being like, shitty on yourself. Before you know it, like, you know what? Someone needed to fix this before you're now creating conflict. Once again, this is just an important phase to realize you're graduated, and this new challenge now shows up. So then most people think, I can't wait to get to the mature phase or the advanced phase because then everything is great. Not true. Every phase has its own problem. So the mature phase, the number one problem that shows up is complacency. Now, complacency, it sounds like, I like complacent. I don't need all this excitement. But complacency is not just about a synonym with the word boring. It's not about being boring, being repetitive. Complacency, and the hardest thing to do when you're in this mature phase or complacent phase, is to find innovation, find new energy, almost that notion of beginner energy to want to reinvent, build something new. You get lazy. You get like bored, like you lose that human spark. And so each phase has its own challenge where the beginner phase are illogical. You have too much information and you don't know how to compartmentalize and weight the different signals. You get to the in-between phase, systems are missing. And so as a result of it, you can feel like, I keep making the same mistakes and whatnot, rather than recognizing, no, this is the opportunity to build a system. In the same way in the beginner phase, this is the opportunity to like, wow, there's so much new data points. You're like, the first time you ever date, you're like, wow, there's so many different kinds of people or different personalities and, different long legs, short legs, everything, just different. All the way to complacency, like recognizing this is where innovation is hardest. Because in the beginning, it feels like everything's new, everything is like but this is the phase where it's mature and I am trying to figure out, how do I regenerate energy, in what way to build momentum, to generate like excitement and creativity in what is already matured.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just thinking the perverse thing that happens when you're in that mature phase, even say running a company, being an entrepreneur. And I've said this before, which my God, did I pay the price for this during COVID, which is, wow, after 9/11, we went down to 4 people from 250. We turned the company around, killed it. We killed it. Talk about energy, innovation. Wow, look at us. Like, look at us. then COVID hit, right? Charlie was like, here you go, Megan. Here you go.
You got
Here
what you wished for.
You got what you wished for. And I was like, well,
Right.
I wasn't hoping for a pandemic, but it's like the idea of you sort of need a crisis because everybody gets really good and focused in crisis. Like we're wired to just get so focused on what we have to get done in front of us. But when you don't have to,
Mhm.
you know, it's just very easy to get lazy and complacent. So I think sometimes we almost want something like that to show up,
Yes.
like something happens so that I can feel good about my skills of just getting stuff done and finding, you know, because it totally creates an energy spike, right? It's like dopamine, you're like, let's go, right? Adrenaline, even cortisol, it helps you get motivated to do something. So what do you do when you
Well, I think
feel
about the
complacent?
single danger. You said, you know,
Okay.
you need a crisis.
Yes,
Like you can easily build the only way for me to,
because
you
I need a
know,
crisis.
kind of innovate, like level up a mature business
Mhm.
is to generate crisis or find crisis. You can see how you
actually
can
make a
now, right?
crisis,
And so
yeah, true.
versus like that is one way
That's a good
it
point.
happens.
Yeah, yeah.
And we spent time with the number 2 in the Ministry of Defense in the UK.
Yeah.
And he was saying in all the research it shows in crisis, it's amazing almost every human being's ability to make the right decisions, as in make the right choices.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy how it just people not always, but generally make
Right.
good choices in that intense, urgent crisis. But when there isn't that, we just make horrible choices,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
We don't make
yeah.
any choices, which is still a choice, and all the wrong things. And so I feel like there's many different tools to look at. I think of even just having this ability to take any situation and say, am I in the beginner phase, the in-between phase, or the mature phase? And based on that, you can actually realize, oh, the challenge. And sometimes if you don't know which phase, the challenge might show you which phase you're in.
Mm.
The challenge that's showing up. Like you'll be like,
Lacking a system, you know, you're in that in-between phase.
or like it's almost like I feel overwhelmed and I don't quite know. Like there's so many data points. Oh, you might be experiencing a beginner phase.
Right.
And it might be a beginner phase for you. For someone else, it might not be. Right. Which is where sometimes the mismatch comes too.
Right.
And I put here, curiosity becomes one of the most important skills. And see how what awareness does is it helps you have curiosity. Telling someone just be curious when they're feeling illogical and scared of all the new stuff is actually almost it does the counter move. When you tell someone who's scared, don't be scared, it makes them more scared. And, you know, so there's an element where in each part, it's upon you to build kind of if I can look at it as there's 3 ways to look at almost everything, right? Am I in that beginner phase? Am I in that Britney Spears kind of in-between phase? Or am I in the mature phase? And based on that, a different type of challenge shows up. And the challenge showing up now makes me curious to kind of say, oh, you're right. Everything is complacent. Oh my God, I'm overwhelmed at so much stuff and everything feels like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You find yourself saying, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. You're probably in the beginner phase.
You know what's weird, actually, as you're saying this, I'm realizing, maybe this is so obvious to you, I can't tell because we created this framework last night, but the beginner in between phase, the mature phase, I think for a lot of us, we have situations where we're in all 3 at the same time, right?
Mhm.
Right? Like I'm working
Give
through
me an
accounting and tax and auditing is not I feel like I feel more beginner in that phase, right?
Yeah.
On the in-between is some of the systems we have for our office space and the events that we run.
Mhm.
The mature phase, there are days where certain parts of the business feel complacent, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
and,
Yes.
and it's almost like, and I wish I had more energy to go tackle that, or I want to, but it's like, I'm not, right? So, there's,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah,
you wanted to ask, go ahead.
Einstein says it's all about referentials.
What does that mean?
So meaning like depending on which perspective you look at it. Like you could
Right.
be a mature phase of this part of the business and it was all, but then if you just place yourself in different referential, like for instance, accounting, then all of
Right.
a sudden you're in a beginner phase.
Right.
Even though the company is.
Right.
So it's
Or like Charlie,
Right.
used to be a beginner in dance and now he's in the mature phase. He's a dancer, right?
Wow.
It's like,
I was going to rate myself an in-between, but
oh,
take that on record.
but you were dancer. He's like, well, if
So-
you consider
So that will be
training 1 day a week for the last 4 years,
And-
then
and that would be Megan as an observer calling me mature phase and me as a participant saying in between phase. So
I think that
but I this notion of like the other word I read in my notes was perspective and this notion of meaning making.
Mhm.
You're making meaning and having the simple tool as opposed to like good or bad only.
Yeah.
Like good or bad only, and you start to try to figure things out. And that's where ultimately the human judgment of most things always go binary, good or bad, and then there are degrees of good or bad. And this
Yeah.
professor at Columbia, Sri Kumar, had given us all of that notion of good, bad, everything, right? Everything is good, bad. And then there's different weightings and degrees of it. And so how do you get a little more in practice sophisticated? Good, bad in beginner looks different than good, bad in between, good, bad in mature. And when you start to realize, and this is the part why awareness matters, you gain perspective, right? And I know a lot of us, we're giving advice to friends, to colleagues, to, parents at times, or siblings. It's just amazing where, see, even someone older than you, like a parent, can be in a beginner phase. It might be the first time they're experiencing retirement or the first time they're experiencing real health challenges. And so for them, that might be a beginner phase for them. So the way they're acting, and maybe they're going crazy and trying to oh my God, and kind of becoming a self-diagnosed doctor for everything and whatnot. You're like, oh, yeah, they're in beginner phase. You might react and give advice very differently.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. As opposed to oftentimes someone who is not in the same beginner phase tells someone, calm down, calm down, calm down. And it's wait, I'm getting worked up.
Right.
The way I'm raising my voice and my advice versus recognizing, wait, they're in the beginner phase. I don't see that same situation as beginner. You see two beginners together, you can see them spin themselves out of control too, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh my God. And then you're like, you missed this data point. Oh my God, it's worse than I thought. And before you know it, or you see two people in the mature phase. Yeah, never changes. Doesn't work.
Right.
That happens a lot in larger organizations, bureaucracy, or even when we talk about certain friends, spouses, or even children, you might be like, yep, never going to change. No, it's over.
Yeah.
They're exactly the same as if they're not organic. You have to realize human beings are organic, which means we're always changing, whether we realize it or not. And when the environment changes, we're changing more. And sometimes price is showing up or not. But I feel this tool just is a simple one, but I think can help. Should we do some questions, discussion?
Oh, yeah. We could all slide the piece, but it's interesting because the whole class in many ways is actually on gaining perspective. And it's a framework for how to gain perspective, but also how to gain it without shitting on yourself, which is what then creates a ton of conflict.
Yeah. And
cool.
The shame will definitely spiral down and have your ability to think straight. So something like this can help you realize, wait, I'm being illogical. It's almost like giving yourself permission to lead from your weakness of being illogical and saying, oh my God, it must be beginner phase stuff.
Yeah.
And versus if you're in the intermediate where you can get very frustrated at things just not done. And it's oh, this is the phase where we need some rules or some processes. And rules can sound bureaucratic, but it's amazing if you just build a system, just like the kitchen, put spices there and whatnot, versus in the beginning that you put stuff, oh, this fits in this hole. So we just put it in there. And before you know it, you're like, all right, I got to walk all the way over there to get that. And that burns in the process. So there are all these things that, as you rep something over and over again, the rules or the system missing shows up.
Cool. All right, LIP community, leadership and practice community. I see you. I put you on the screen, the gallery. If anybody has any questions, actually, Greg put a comment in. I haven't read it yet. And if there's anybody else who want to put a comment in, or you want to unmute,
quick preference to those on the Zoom, and then we'll also turn to people here sitting in person. We'll give you 5 seconds to unmute or choose to go first. Feel the courage. Go. It's not anybody.
The countdown.
Janet Jackson countdown.
Oh,
3.
Yeah. We do have to do the Rhythm Nation dance.
Yes. All right.
Go ahead, Greg. Do you want to kick? Do you want to just maybe make the comment? I didn't read it.
I was just. I mean, I think that the discussion's fascinating. Just to me, that kind of the recognition you brought up a few different examples of when feel overwhelmed or frustrated with others, at least sometimes for me, and sometimes be able to kind of recognize when you feel that emotion to I think it's powerful to take a step back. I've always kind of thought of it as the self. So even the hard mode recognition for me, that whole teaching and that concept of, which is, assuming something that's harder for you, is just going to work out, and then getting frustrated when the problems come. For me, reframing that, it just made me think about, as you were going through this, it's been very helpful to me when I get frustrated to then take a step back and be like, all right, am I missetting my own expectations? But then in light of like where I might be in some of these cases, it's like that beginner phase or maybe even in between phase. This adds like a layer of like almost situational awareness to this kind of the self-awareness.
Yeah. The part I'll add, Greg, is it's fascinating. A concept we have introduced, kind of like video gaming. You can play a video game in easy mode, normal mode, hard mode, and insane mode. And I think of a lot of us, we find most things in life either hard mode or insane mode. And when you're insane, you realize you kind of can't think. So you have to almost don't play especially important things in life when you're in insane mode. But that's a whole different class we could talk about. But this notion of hard mode, it's kind of recognizing even in these three phases, they're all hard, but they're just different hard.
Yeah.
In the beginner phase, it's hard because it's so much new information coming at you. Like, don't be hard. Don't overbeat yourself up for like, oh my God, or like, bracing or getting overexcited. It's like, oh my God, it's just kind of the beginner phase.
Right.
So it's amazing how you can experience the hard mode differently when you realize it's the beginner phase. When you start to get frustrated at the lack of rules and process and systems and whatnot, that's also hard. Building a system and a process is not easy work, but it's a different kind of hard mode. Just like when you find yourself saying, nothing changes here, everything's the same. And that type of like, if you find yourself sounding like a grumpy old man or like a grumpy, employee who's been in the role forever and they're like, it's always done this way. And I work at the DMV and that's how it goes. If you find yourself there, it's like, oh, that's a different hard mode, right?
Right.
Breaking complacency is not easy.
Right.
And so this whole notion of hard mode doesn't mean like one is harder than the other. They're all just different kinds of hard. And if you're able to figure out, right? I love how
Sorry, no, it's funny.
you have Megan's son who
Hey Matthew, I literally was just going to pick up a conversation with his dad this morning in the car about the kids. I'm so glad I didn't do it.
Oh yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I'm so glad I didn't do it.
Megan's son just walked in and he was going to be the topic of the class, but he's not though. He's not.
No, it's nothing to do with anything.
So she will wait till he's gone and then. Huang, you had some stuff in there, like
Laura I
Laura I.
commented she can't speak though. So can I read out Laura I's and then she said it's also good. It's just because she can't speak, but it's also good when thinking about leadership and people skills. When people start blaming others for the issues they're creating, how I can reframe for myself and maybe for them. Yeah, that's actually it's a good point. When other people are getting angry and frustrated, you can. Yes. As you're aware of yourself that you do that too, you might realize that's what they're doing. And so you'd probably treat them a little differently. So, and just real quick, for those of you who don't know, Laura I actually can speak and she is like really loud. I didn't mean she cannot speak, but
like she's not mute, like actual, but right now in her situation, she can. So just to clarify, but this is a great point because you have to realize how easily we are triggered by other people.
Yes.
And how easily, it's almost like the whole notion of when you say, that wasn't the best version of myself, meaning like I could have reacted better.
Yeah.
I could have given, it's not always about advice. See, this is the part. It's not always about feedback and advice. It's just even about our reaction, our body language, our tone and every aspect. And this notion of if you start to look at, situations, especially ones that kind of get you emotionally worked up and realize, wait, is the person I'm listening to, are they in beginner phase in this, intermediate, right? Or in between or mature? It's amazing that simple compartmentalization can just calm you down and react differently.
Because we get perspective as the observer, right? As you're saying, as the advice giver, we get perspective of that. Is that what you're saying? Like we have perspective.
You can control your reaction, your advice giving to the person. And as soon as you bucket them in the right thing,
then
and in practice where it gets hard is that you genuinely think children are beginner phase for everything. And then adults are mature phase for everything. And that is not true at all. In fact, you can tell more. I think it's actually more indicative of the challenge. So that part where I listed red, you might get a better litmus test read just by looking at the challenge. And when I put that slide of being curious, right? If you get curious, even in others you observe, like are all the data points and the body language and the tone and everything showing up? Would you bucket it under bullets under illogical? Or is it bullets under process missing? Or is it bullets under complacency? And given that topic, you might say, oh, to them, they're experiencing mature phase in this or beginner phase.
Right.
You would respond differently. And so that's cool in kind of what Laura's saying. Often we get very frustrated or worked up, blaming others, being angry at others, and you realize, oh, I need to talk to them based on being in that phase.
Some of the people are here. If you want to unmute on this Zoom, and then maybe one more question from the Zoom, and then we'll do some in person here.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm not able to read all of them.
Huang had some good stuff in there if you want.
Yeah, for myself, I think like I just realized that sometimes it's hard to admit that I am in a beginner mode in like a new situation. Like for me, I'd be like, oh, I should apply like the things I have learned in this new situation. So I should be like further along. I should have my shit together. But then actually like I don't. And sometimes I think like, oh, I'm so like I'm so scared of like, oh, people think that I'm not doing a good job. But actually, I think about it is actually the hardest thing is admitting that I think that I'm not doing a good job, and like in the situation, like come to acceptance of like I am in a new situation and I am a beginner in this.
You know, I was gonna say, you know what made me think of is when we were talking about and teaching last week, the helpful versus hurtful narratives.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've had this conversation, it's not necessarily lying to yourself, but even as you say that, Kwong, and like, look, I do that too. I think a lot of us will do that, where we kind of put that kind of narrative in our head, like I should be further along. I should be. It's shame. Is to recognize, is that helping me right now? Right. And it's like, yeah, but it's how I feel. But doing that over and over isn't helping. So that's one piece of it, right?
So
which I've always struggled with that, because it's like it can feel like you have to lie to yourself.
No,
right?
so can I add a nuance to that? This is where the overdone positivity movement, overdone sort of lie and, fake it till you make it sort of the aspect. Even, Amy Cuddy, who popularized that phrase, we spent time with her. She's like, they're misunderstanding what I'm saying. This idea of it, there's a temporary window. And are there places where you have to say, I can do it when I feel I can't? Yes, that place exists, but that's not the only tool to use, which is why helpful, hurtful narratives is not only about like kind of lying to yourself. This part of like, when you see anyone do anything in beginner phase, I don't think it's about lying to yourself. It's like, imagine Kwong in this case, I have to have my shit together. I was like, what beginner has their shit together on any topic? It's like, imagine saying, okay, Kwong, you've never skied, but I'm just going to take you up to a black diamond. Go. And if you narrate, I have to have my shit together. I have to, people think I'm not doing a good job. I'll be like, hey, you're a beginner. You should be screaming, paranoid, gripping your poles the way Megan did and taking your boots off and trying to claw down as if like, it's a reverse rock climbing exercise.
It was like that.
Right? Exactly. Like I'm saying like, it's amazing where as you recognize this, you can find almost jovialness. You can be like, oh my God, the hard to admit. It's easier to admit at times that I'm a beginner. It's so much easier to admit I'm a beginner than to admit, no, I think I have enough of my shit together. Or like, you know what, I am good enough. Like, it's actually harder to do that. And a lot of us have overdone the just say that I'm good enough and I have my shit together. And I feel like I'm lying to myself and my body knows. And some things you can keep repeating and you might believe, but there is another way to go, which is simply saying beginner phase. And so it's like giving yourself that massive permission to act like any other human being doing anything in beginner phase. They look like idiots. Their reactions are like idiots. And their judgment and their oh my gods are overblown, including excitement. It's like, oh my God, this is it. We're done. And I'm like, no, beginner phase. Like it's like, how many times have we even done our dance class and someone's like, oh my God, that was an amazing workout. And we're like, that's the warm up, and they're like, what? Like, so this whole notion, you don't have an accurate reading. Right?
Yeah.
Anyone on there, you can still unmute, ask away. You can interrupt. Interruption is highly encouraged here, like most adult classes as opposed to children's classes. But anybody here, like what's on your minds? What's your thinking?
Can I say something, please? I've written it in the chat. But
Sure.
what should the gaps of time be between the different phases or stages? What would you recommend there?
Excellent question. This is by Deborah. By the accent, I assume it's somewhere Scottish, British, or somewhere in that vicinity is my guess.
Yeah, hence in England.
England. So the gaps of time between the stages. This is an excellent question, because the challenge with human beings is you can regress, right? You can actually touch a phase and then regress back.
Yeah.
And so first to realize think of almost everything when it comes to human beings as directional versus precision. It's something that one of our investors was a former CFO at Chase, and she always would teach me the difference between anything that's a precision sport versus directional accuracy. So I want you to think about the stages direction. And oftentimes you think you're over a certain phase and then you realize, oh my God, I'm still having that newbie kind of reaction. New information. And it's like, I thought I was going to the in-between, but I think I'm more beginner. And it's simply, and of course there are these transition phases where there's like a little bit of both. So think of it more directionally. And why that's important is, once again, you'll adjust accordingly. It's not about like a switch that you flip, saying, now I'm going to look at the whole thing as in-between phase. No, like, so, and how you know it's right usually is almost always like a little bit in hindsight. Think of almost everything. How do you know everything? How do you know you made the right choice? You'll know a little after a little time passes. And so a little time can sometimes just be as short as days and a week. Sometimes it's a month, but usually it's not years. You'll know like, you know what? I'm treating it like beginner phase, but then when I start, and also it's two thoughts. One is kind of that self-awareness and self-studying of watching your own signals. Time is such an important element of understanding, did I get it right or wrong? I'm treating it as beginner, but like, you know what? Like those are the same data points I mentioned last week or last month. So maybe I am like repeating myself into thinking I'm beginner phasing when the same thing is happening. So self-awareness. The other part that is so powerful is even just one human being that is consistently in the zone with you, meaning if someone is in the arena with you and you actually out loud expose the transparency of what you're thinking and reading and seeing, if you say, oh, this really feels like beginner phase and these data points are the reasons why, someone who's co-working with you or someone who's observed and worked with you closer can say, you know, that's the same stuff you said last week or last month, and they can help catch your blind spots. And now I'm not saying it because there's a caution of they can make you feel shameful. They can make you feel like,
but you could also manipulate it, you know, like you're actually like protecting yourself because you don't want to admit you should be further along. I'm repeating the same things, like, you know, and then you start to feel shame as you're doing it. Right.
So the minute I agree with Megan's point, the minute you add somebody else, performance comes in your head.
Yeah.
So like we start to manage to what I think I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to sound like I'm in the in-between phase. So I start to explain it that way. And you can see
but I really feel like I'm in the beginner phase, but I don't want to admit it because I feel like I should be further along.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the hardest skills to learn is and this is like high agency versus low agency, how to break that habit, which we've so ingrained in us that I start almost instantly with how I'm going to be perceived, how my words and what I say is going to be reacted to, as opposed to I'm really trying to figure out what's the first thoughts that came in my head. And I always say things like, if nobody was in the room, right?
Yeah.
Or if I could just unfiltered speak and didn't matter what I said, I'm trying to kind of sift through my own. This is the self-awareness part. Like, so if I'm sifting through which phase am I in, and I can't quite tell, but then I might say, okay, do I sound like, what are the thoughts that come to mind? I'm overwhelmed with, this is new, that's new. Do I sound illogical, or do I sound more like kind of frustrated at like either others or people that someone should figure this out? There should have been a better process. It's like, oh, or do I kind of sound like that grumpy old person who's always like, nothing changes, everything's the same, you know, like being able to do the whole, if nobody was here, what would you say? And it takes reps to build that, because usually when someone is here, it's very hard to do that.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how many people we've coached and people we've met where literally you simply say, okay, if nobody was here, what would you say?
Right.
Right? I think
permission to be really honest.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, I think we used to watch. I used to watch. I said we. I used to watch this dating show as Patty Stanger, the millionaire matchmaker. Her little trick thing always was, okay, you're stuck in an elevator, right? Like you're trying to decide who I want to date. Close your eyes. Who do you wish was in the elevator with you, right? And boom, that's the person. Like people do that all the time, or flip a coin, right? What, and then heads for this, tails for this. What do you wish? Oh, like this notion of trying to extract your own truth.
Yeah.
Is actually really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are simple prompts and questions that help extract truth. But like to be able to realize self-awareness is the hardest part. And it takes reps and reps and reps. And as you do it, you get better at then also getting reaction, having someone observe and feedback. And so coming back to Deborah's question, the stages, like reps will help you, but time is one element, like doing it over and over again. And this is where give yourself even permission to misjudge which stage you're in. I can't tell you how important that is. I keep saying I'm intermediate and I keep getting it wrong. That's okay, right? Just like I keep, thinking I'm a beginner, but someone's like, that's not true. You're like mature. You're just taking the same data point as if it happened for the first time. Like that's okay too. This is so difficult. Give yourself permission to fumble. Right? It's like, just like, how Megan said the skiing thing, not my thing. Well, this is unlike skiing. You kind of have to live life, right? You kind of have to do this. So you can't say not my thing. You have to do it. So how important it is to say, no, like, yeah, it's like, I'm a beginner. So I'm saying not my thing, as opposed to not my thing.
Well, thank you very much. That was very informative. Thank you.
Thoughts from here. What's going on? We got some. Petra, go ahead.
Yeah. The skills you're talking, the recognition you're talking about, it's really valuable. But what do you do when you're kind of stuck in the middle where the emotional is influencing, the logical side of you saying that, hey, I really haven't done this before, so I shouldn't be hard on myself. But you've also got the emotional component saying, hey, I've got to know these people. I'm supposed to know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then you've got to reach that equilibrium in the middle, the wise mind, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Where basically you take a little bit of both and do something constructive with it.
Yes.
What kind of skills do you do to combat, to reach that wise mind?
I'm assuming everyone heard the question, right? Yes.
Greg, can you hear it a little bit?
Kind of. Terry's like maybe. So Hector was asking this question, that this notion of tell me if I'm, like you're doing something new, but you want to impress someone. So there's this gap between acting like a fumbling idiot or like total, and being illogical, whatnot, versus like you're being cautious because you want to impress and you want to maybe seem less amateur in that sense, right? So it's amazing even knowing that for yourself. And oftentimes what happens is we crunch the whole thing and we forget about it. And often one of the biggest mistakes that happens is you successfully fake it. Right. And you impress them and they believe that you're further along, and then they're using jargon and talking. And then you start doing that whole like, yeah, exactly. And it gets worse and worse. So I can't tell you how many of these things sort of go into like rapidly compounding issues.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, okay, too, it happens. But then you need a place to be able to go tap into and visit like the reality of what happened. Like it might be finding one other person to say, oh my God, that was so fucking stressful, right? I totally don't know what I'm talking about, but I must have said a few things that made them think I really know what I'm talking about. Like I feel this way, and just being able to kind of cleanse that reality check of that beginner phase and what you're experiencing being scored higher than what you might be. And even just having that might ground you back to saying, okay, but I am a beginner, right? So maybe at some point I kind of want to say, you know what? I love what I impressed you on, but like I'm so beginner in this. You'll be surprised that especially people that matter, which means you'll see them over and over again. People that don't matter. I meet someone on the subway once, and I'm just thinking I've never seen them again. Who cares, right? Have the most fun, sound the most impressive, and pick a different name, right? Who cares? But when it comes to people you're seeing even twice, 3 times again, it matters more than you realize to get it to the right truth before you focus on optics. There was this whole discussion we had years ago with Simon Sinek, who built this whole TED Talk thing about kind of safe inside the circle and then danger outside. This notion of we end up generating way too much danger on the inside. And we generate danger first and foremost in our own heads for my own self.
Yes, that's
Right?
right.
And so it's like, there's like danger outside that you need the energy of not even yourself, but your teammates to fight. But like there are these internal battles that are far more lethal and far more debilitating. And so as a result, you can't fight outside dangers. So in that front, I think of like, it feels often like a waste of time, but I find the greatest, best investments in time is actually trying to fight the internal dangers more proactively, more aggressively. So starting with yourself, as I find my mismatch, looking for ways to kind of like be able to ground myself back to reality and being able to even go to that person saying like I'm so over my head, this so beginner, but like there's a desire to like obviously grow. There's a desire to say, I want to learn more. And you'll be surprised how many people actually just want to help. Most observers, most people want to help, but it's the mismatch that then feels like, wait, something's wrong. And then it's like, you might win short term, but the price you pay, the long term happens so much faster. So it's better to like learn the skills to get to the correction, the truth. We did this whole exercise years ago with, sorry.
No, sorry. I was just thinking something before actually, Hector, when you spoke. I think it's an excellent question. I was thinking I had written a note last night. Sorry. Wrote a note last night about how hard it is to help. So when you mentioned if you have too much shame and you're beating yourself up and now you're not going to share anything, sometimes I think about like even with our team, it's really hard to help. I notice the same thing. I'm very hard to help when I'm shaming myself because I'm super protective, right? And then I might be blaming, right? And then there's conflict. So you really can't help each other, right? You can't. So meaning like it was a little bit of a different point, but like shame will prevent you from, yours should be very hard to help, right? And we call them RABs. And if you've ever taken one of our modules, our first module is all around the things we do that make it difficult for other people to give us the truth. Shame is probably one of the hardest ones because nobody's going to say anything because you're already doing it to yourself. So it's really hard to give you honest truth. But I'm sorry, I just had that. I was just thinking about how important
I think about
plays in getting help.
When you're talking about that emotional feeling, like to me, the beginner phase is one of the best ways to give yourself permission to feel that feeling and recognize the gap between where you think they think I should be, or you think you should be.
This was the other example I had in my mind while my mind is running. I had like 8 different examples. This is like such a real, but then I feel kind of crazy right now. But I was and then I was like, should I share this or not share this? Sorry, that's what was going through my head. We had somebody who wanted to work, who wants to work for us this past week, and she actually set up a call with us. We weren't quite sure what it was about, but super established in her career, very successful, mergers and acquisitions, very successful. And as she's explaining herself to us, finally she stopped and she said, I'm so uncomfortable. I have never had to like explain myself this way. She like loves us, has met us. And it's like, she almost had like this out of body experience where she was like, but I loved it that she was honest. She had like I've never had to do this before. Almost like I've had people coming after me my whole life. I feel so uncomfortable talking about myself. And she was like, so can I just pause for a second? And it's like, it is super hard to do that for one. She did that in an interview.
Yes.
That's a very difficult skill to get to, but if you can't do it with other people that are in your safe circle, that's more of a dangerous, in some ways, danger. It's all relative. But you have to learn to do that with people that you trust, that you could say, stop the conversation for a second and be like, I feel really uncomfortable right now. I feel like I'm all over the place, and just be able to like pause for a second and be honest. Like, I think I'm saying stuff to you that I'm not really thinking, but because I've got other things going on in my head, but I'm acting like I'm aware. And I just like, that's actually a really hard skill to get to. But like, even just being able to, she was able to do it in an interview. I was like, wow, like that's like just, And
the analogy when we think about it is, have you ever tried dizzy bat? And if you ever tried this, where you have to put your forehead on a bat and run around 10 times. And so if you ever like, do anything, whether it's a merry-go-round or anything, when you spin, like, and you get dizzy, like the way to actually break it is you have to ground yourself. You actually, if you fall on the ground, it's amazing. It'll stop the dizzy. You can then, because there's a relay race where you're supposed to run to the bat, then you spin around 10 times, you have to run back, but it's hilarious because people can't run straight. They start running sideways and all over, and they're trying to reach. And literally just the act of falling grounds you and then you can go.
Yeah.
There's an element where people get stuck in these mental
Yes.
things.
Yes.
And sometimes that grounding is what I'm talking about. You ground and then you can go back. And even if you re-dizzy yourself, you just need to ground yourself. And it made me think about, so we actually did a lot of work helping the Air Force over the years. And the head of HR at the Air Force, 3-star general, is one we coached and helped a lot over the years too. And we're talking about truth comes in the middle, then optics. We focus so much on the optics, the narrative, how we present, that we don't see that the inner part to get right first is the truth. And that truth is very difficult because I am guessing people are thinking this, but that is often not accurate, and try to figure out, are you really thinking this? And even being able to go and suss that out. Like that notion of this individual, like kind of took the middle of the conversation and just grounded herself. And it allowed the whole discussion just to be so effective as a result of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're often scared to ground ourselves because we think that leads to making us look like complete idiots.
Mm-hmm.
And so why, to me, this framework in the class, well, here's one way to explain how you can be an idiot. Giving yourself permission, be like, I'm kind of beginner mode in this, right? I'm a beginner phase on this topic. Like when it comes to understanding like planes in the Air Force, you'd be like, I'm probably mature mode, right? Mature phase.
Yeah.
But like saying this to me is beginner. Nothing wrong with it. And
I've seen you do that your whole life. I mean, I've been working with Charlie for 28 years. I've seen you do this. I never really understood the framework because I don't think you had necessarily this framework when you were in your 20s. Let me just call it this and this and this. But I see you do that a lot where you can feel like, you need to know something and you can narrate. I'm the CEO. I founded this company, whatever I should know. You don't do that because you know that's not going to help you figure it out. Like that's not going to help you mentally go into something that you don't know very much about. If you're saying, I should know this, I should know this, I should be better at this, I should whatever, but you'll narrate quickly like I'm a beginner at this and I'm going to learn it, right? Which is a curiosity. I'm going to learn this, Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot. Well, you touch on the authenticity. It's so, and I think that's what you say, rep your authenticity, like train yourself to be authentic is a super important thing. On the other reverse, I want to also say is train yourself to be authentic with the person in front of you. I feel that there's often people will come talk to me as experts on, as I get excited about a topic, I'll share, and then all of a sudden person will try to keep up and not throw buzzwords or
right.
And then you can take it down. I mean, I like to actually then ask the question, is like, how involved are you into this? I'm curious that you are, and well, not really passionate. Oh, that's really cool. Then I would like to teach you about this. But to be able to disarm it instead of going into the, that was just to say, yes, you're right. But also on the other side, being authentic as a listener to cut the person off and say, hey, you're just a beginner. That's cool. Take the cloak off and pretending and make them feel so. I was very curious. Like the conflict thing was something I took some notes on, completely parallel, because it had to do, and then you brought up, COVID and 9/11, and how in those moments humans are able to instinctively, intuitively find like the right answer. And it connected with like every day when we share something, like little conflicts occur all the time if we're not really aware, and that's kind of a natural default setting that we fall ourselves in. Yeah. Do we do that to actually unstuck ourselves from some emotional things that are troubling us that have nothing to do with, reframe. Sorry, it's like a real fast. Is conflict necessary? I mean, I understand it's important to avoid it, be aware and disarm it as it occurs, but it first has to occur to disarm it. And finding the deeper explanation as to why it occurs, isn't that even more important than to just disregard and say it's...
There's a slide I had made I never used. I've been dying to use it. In fact, I spent so much time making it. I was like, where am I going to use this? So Arms give me the chance. There's an old framework called get the cow out of the ditch, then figure out how the cow got in the ditch. And these are beautiful slides. Look at this. You get the cow out of the ditch first before you figure out how to prevent the cow from going in the ditch. We mash the two and try to do two at the same time. And oftentimes when life is running, and whether it's with children or spouses or even business and whatnot, like first get the cow out, because the minute you get the cow out, it's working, it's producing. Versus oftentimes we're sitting there. How did the cow get in? Who got the cow in? Who made this ditch? And before you know it, like that, we spend too much time in sort of that meta like analysis and figuring out attribution and blame and a process that's missing, versus get the cow out. Then you actually, once it's out and it's producing and working, you then try to figure out, okay, how do I prevent the cow from going in? What's missing in the rules and whatnot? So just opportunity to use that.
I'm just thinking, I'm trying to like think about the question or the comments that you're making. You know, you kind of said, for one, the 9/11, the COVID situation, that desire to be like, how do we get more of that in like our everyday? And you can almost feel like, should we create a fight? You know, and it's like, and I feel like, and in some ways, sometimes conflict, I think, does do that. Adrenaline goes up, and sometimes it's just getting some of the truth of things that maybe haven't been discussed can actually create a huge unlock. But that's because things are compounding. But I was just thinking, like, in many ways, I wish there was like, you know, the idea of more peace, less conflict in the world, less conflict at work, less conflict at home, all those things. I think we all want that. But I think there is some level of healthy conflict that is good, because I just think it's unnatural to not have things compound over time, and the tiniest little thing can create conflict. You know, and somebody says it once, you're like, yeah, if you've ever heard like Brene Brown talks about this, like, she talks about her husband one day comes home, says something, and she's like, I forget what she says, but just rips into him. It's not about that thing. It's about the 10 things before that were compounding tiny, but you yell at that one thing. It's not about that, right? It's not about the fridge is too packed with crap. It's like all the other stuff. So I think we could just get better at knocking those down as they're happening. Amazing. We'd have less big blow ups. But I do think once in a while, a blow up of things is naturally going to happen. And it's about learning how to have that conflict better. I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, I feel like I'm stating the obvious in terms of like learning how to do it better. But I think learning how to do it better is when both people are becoming more self-aware, you know, becoming more self-aware of whatever stage you're in. You might be like, you know what, Megan's a beginner at this because she wasn't with me when I did this at 9/11 or whatever, or you could help each other actually get through that conflict. But anyways, I do think the conflict plays a role in like, in getting kind of unstuck, but it's really because truth has been more buried. And you know, the idea that the truth will actually point you in a direction, like at least gets both people feeling more grounded. Now we're kind of working on the same team. I just think it like, you know, the work just gets easier. So I don't know if that's
one way I was thinking about this idea of, is conflict necessary? And that's a great question. And these things will be opposing, like same thought, but totally different answers, which sound schizo. First, realizing conflict always has a cost. And sometimes it's hard for us to see the residual cost of it. Yeah. Like I might be like, that was great. The other person's like, kind of, you piece of shit. Like, you know, you use that, because in conflict, what ends up happening, and the more heated it gets, we start to fight unfair, especially with people we know. Right. And so those things will often not be easy to take away. It will be remembered maybe for longer. So like just recognizing conflict has a cost. And often the residual cost is what you will never see, but it will show up over time. There'll be little pieces like, why do they keep like questioning me in this one? Why do they keep asking me the same question multiple times? And you will not understand there was some conflict way back that led to this thing. So first, conflict has a cost, which is why we try to avoid it. That's right. Very easy to avoid conflict for that reason. Now, here's the flip side. I think about hard things. And this Greg talked about hard mode. Anything hard, it's just wrought with conflict. But the conflict first starts with me, my understanding of it, my kind of like, even this whole beginner, intermediate, like mature, like I have conflict with myself. I should know more. I should have better answers. God, I shouldn't have done that. But why did I? Like, I don't know. And there's like massive battle going in me. Now imagine adding even just one other person in that mix. So now it's like that person, I'm assuming, is going to be all sane just because they're acting calm, but they might be having a different kind of conflict battle on themselves in this topic. Now combine the two people who are trying to actually act, kind of to Hector's point, calm and pulled together and more mature, but they're not. They're having a battle. The other person's having a battle. Both are faking their kind of, I'm okay. And then you have to actually make a decision quick, because like either money's running out or some bad decisions about to happen. And it's kind of like you just recognize how hard it is. And so in those situations, if you want to win and the right outcome, I would say like almost expecting conflict as a signal that we're working out kinks. That like without conflict, we're going to operate with like thinking we're in sync when we're not, thinking that, assumptions and mental models are correct when they're not. And so this notion of kind of just recognizing that like would give you sort of, once again, more permission to like kind of, when the conflict shows up, like you might even say, oh, is this an important, hard thing? Right? Or sometimes when you fight about something really stupid, it actually is because of something else that you're talking about that's important and hard. And so when you start to see things like that, you start to realize, okay, conflict has its value, its place. It's very difficult. And in the process of it, afterwards, you might get to a place where you can make better choices, better decisions. But also realizing, since it has a cost, like just if you're aware of it, you might just take one less below the belt shot.
Yeah.
It's amazing where just, and one more below the belt shot, one more emphasis, just reducing that over time compounds with you having more energy because you're not generating the extra, right? And then the other part, I just instinctively reaction when you said instinctively find the right answer. I just changed it to better play. There is no right answer anymore on anything. There is just like, that was a good play. Like, and often that was a better play than maybe doing nothing, or that was a better play than the wrong play. But to actually know if it was the right answer, it's like, you'll never know what the other choice really would have produced. And since so many things are compounding fast, it's very hard to actually truly say right, wrong.
Yeah.
That binary thinking is very factory industrial age. That's the remnant still of the 100 years that we face.
You know what's awesome about the better play too?
Yeah.
Better play. And one of the elements of just do less damage is a better play, right? And that example you just gave, which is one less shot below the belt or whatever it might be, that you're like, just one less of those things is a better play. Like there are days where just not doing more damage is a better play. You know?
Yeah. Mitigation,
like,
right?
The days like something is not like you would, if you're aware of that and there's danger by inserting myself into a certain conversation, or like I just have I gotta get it out. Like, there are times where
and how odd is not odd, but like we don't think about doing less damage is sometimes not spiraling myself out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. When the whole thing about, shitting on yourself, that's less damage. When I just shit on myself,
one of
less.
One of my classic ways to do that, and I'm becoming more aware of it, is if things are going bad, say it's a series of 2 or 3 things, I will then think of other things just to add on top to make myself feel even crappier. It's like, well, now you add this, and it's like, are those things really bother me right now? Not really, but I think it's making me feel better to just pile on. No, of course it's not making me feel better. It's just a bad habit. But
and I think there's this is part of the meaning making.
Yeah.
I want to explain to you why I feel shitty. So then if I can make a longer, more exhaustive list of all the things that would make me feel shitty, you're going to believe me. And it's not about, but it's not like
I win.
You're doing damage to yourself.
Yeah.
And so that extras, even if it's 1 or 2 more you're adding on, when you get aware, you just like literally just
bite your tongue.
Right?
Yeah. There's like a little toy that has like that thing.
Cincher.
It's like a cinchy, squishy thing. You know those toys where you grab it and it falls?
Right.
I want to get one of those so I can remind myself to like just.
It was actually off the Kevin Hart recent special. Just, like
you'll know
if you watch it,
Funny.
Squeezing a body part, cinch it. Like, so as you see the shitting on cinch it. Like, and there's that kind of, and the more you explain, but they can't tell you what I was going to say. Like, just cinch it.
Yeah, that was a whole other topic this week. I was like, sometimes I'm like, why do you cut me off when I wear it? Because I know you're good. I feel it. It's coming. Even by letting you say it. Oh my God, now that I'm aware of it, I'm like, holy crap. Like, it's like, gonna do that for myself, but I've never understood that. Totally understand. That's why we had like 8 classes of things we could have talked about. I feel this is a good one.
Will you try again skiing?
What's that?
Will you try again skiing?
I don't know.
One thing at a time. One thing at a time.
Now, I know, not right now. Once I get home prices to yeah, I would maybe.
If you start on a bunny hill, it literally is practically
that.
flat.
That I could do.
Right?
Do cross country.
Yes, no. Actually, I learned cross country first, and I realized I picked the wrong sport. It's like so boring. So by the time I went down, I just was so excited for football. You know,
when it was snowing, we went out in the streets.
Oh, you cross country? All right.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, I realized cross country is the same as track, but on snow. That's not what I signed up for. I was like, I did sledding and I wanted to learn to ski, not like running.
I remember feeling some highs. I did. There was it was a big mountain. It was like Vermont or wherever. I mean, I remember feeling some highs, but I think I don't narrate that. I'm thinking about more that I could have broken my leg. My father, I have a narrative. My father-in-law broke his leg and had his leg amputated when he was 35 from skiing. So that added to my, no. You like I don't need it.
That's fair.
I stopped gymnastics when my sister broke her arm. Like I have a lot of unfortunate, like, oh, you know what? I don't need to have that.
No, and the percentage of people who probably skied a blue or a green and amputated their leg.
No, he was like
approximately zero.
Like he was an amazing athlete. So
he lost his leg because of skiing.
He broke his ankle skiing. It shattered in a ton of pieces. And then run. And then what happened was he was in the hospital and the tourniquet was left. He didn't realize it. So my mother and they both passed. He was 40. So can I just quickly tell the story? Sure. He was 40 when they met. She was 25. They met at a bar sitting next to each other. When they got up to leave the bar to go to another bar, she said, "What are you walking funny? He had pants on." And he's like, "Because I got one leg." And she went, "What do you mean you have one leg?" And she was a nurse for her whole life. And as he explained what happened, the injury itself and what happened in the hospital, she was like, "I think that's malpractice. That never should have happened. Like something about the tourniquet was left on too long." So it was an ankle, but they ended up amputating right above his knee, which made his life much harder at 35, because even if you get to, my mom was a nurse too, but like, even if you get to keep your knee, you can do a lot more with a knee because it's a joint, right? Once you go above the knee. So he lived from 35 on without but then he had like all the, phantom pains and stuff. So he got a little bit alcoholic because of that, because doctors will tell you, drink like whiskeys and the heart. So I would go over once in a while, but oh my God, this poor man, because there's nothing. There's literally like nothing they can do for the phantom pain. But anyway, poor thing. But I remember, why was I telling the story? Oh yeah, because
I don't want to ski either.
Yeah, no. But you know what was amazing about this human being? Sorry, let me just share this. He's such a amazing human being. He never really the only few times I saw him in pain was when he'd be drinking, and he was the nicest man and he never complained about it. And I remember my parents meeting and they're like, "Oh my God, Megan, your in-laws are the nicest people on the planet." He'd be walking down like a cobblestone street in the village, take them out to dinner or whatever, way behind everybody, not complain. And then if somebody would come back, never complained about it. And he had one leg. I mean, he just like struggled and never complained. He had like the best attitude. And on top of that, when he was passing, they had pancreatic, supposed to die within 3 months. It was horrible. My mother-in-law canceled his book of the month club. He found out about it. He said, "Jen, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that?" She was kind of like, and he's like, "I want it." He re-signed up for me, lived for a year, which is like a whole cool story about, if you believe and he should, it mets to his liver, his kid, everything. He should have died, even faster. But like, if you actually have something to do, something that I want to do this, I want to read more. He lived an entire year with pancreatic, liver, bone, everywhere cancer.
Purpose.
Like part of the story, you got a huge payout.
Oh, sorry. That's what I meant to say. Sorry. So Jenny said, I think that's not right. So that's why my husband grew up in Bayonne. They were not very well off. He grew up in Bayonne, New Jersey. And like he's one of the only families in that town that had like their own full house, not like two families in a house. So when I met him, people would always come to his house because it wasn't that nice, but it was just a bigger house because they could afford it, because she helped him get like back in those days, it was like a huge settlement. It was like $100,000, and it bought them their house in Bayonne, New Jersey. So like they had they had a little bit more than just because of that, but she helped him do that. And anyways, they got married like a year later, 15 years apart. They look super sweet, whatever. But she helped him do that. Yeah.
Fighting the good story.
So you see why she's not going to go skiing.
That's why I'm not.
And now I understand.
I heard stories and I could re-narrate it. Anyways, we're gonna do lunch, and one thought I was gonna share before we go. Last night I was looking, the idea of cortisol. Everybody knows like how do you reduce cortisol is a big thing. Mental, emotional. This will help reduce cortisol. Stop shitting on yourself. Stop shaming yourself is the biggest thing I'm working on. But when I was looking through, I saw someone talking about different techniques to lower cortisol. And one of them was sitting at a communal table to have lunch. And it's like, I'm doing that tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doing that. We're going to do that. We're going to have a conversation. This is going to reduce our cortisol. We're going to sit here. Sorry for you guys on the, you go have lunch together, do something somewhere with other people. It's time conversation.
Take the topic, but I feel like our intention of why we created LIP, and this is the 5th year or going the 6th year now, creating weekly leadership classes, is we want you to like take topics that resonate and talk to other people about it. Yeah. Like, wrestle with it and share and help, others as it's been helping us and helping others.